Jannik Sinner disposed of Alexander Sasha Zverev because he's just that much better, because he works that much hard on every point, and it's hard to topple a man who's on top of his game. And on the women's side here as well, there's Madison Keys, who defeated Arina Sabalenka. How do you see both of those finals going?
First of all, the men, right?
Yeah.
Those boys born in the 90s are disappointments. Disappointments. How are you boys? This stat is wild to me, right? So, in terms of men's tennis and Grand Slam titles won, the group born in the 80s, and we know that is a group that contains Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, and then there's also Wawrinka in there. There's also Marat Safin from the early 80s, and there's Leighton Hewitt and Andy Roddick in there. They have, and Andy Murray as well. They've got 80 Grand Slam titles, and what they did is unprecedented, especially that big three where they went so deep into their careers, still at their peak, that, as I'm saying, it's unprecedented, and they ate into the next generation's peak, which somewhat has resulted in, but also, as I'm saying, as a group, those boys born in the 90s need to have a meeting and talk to themselves. Two Grand Slam title, gentlemen. Dominic Thiem, after making a few Grand Slam titles, particularly at the French, finally won one at the US Open. And yes, he was then hampered by injuries, which has led to his retirement. But prior to the injuries taking control of the narrative of his career, he seemed as if he was all too happy to just win the one Grand Slam and like, I did it. I'm done. You know, you think of like Del Potro also has like great talent and has just the one Grand Slam title won against Federer at the 2009 US Open. He was hampered by injuries, right? And then it's just Medvedev. And then Medvedev last year at the Australian Open had a 2-love lead against Jannik Sinner. I gave that up and Sinner won it, of course. And then again, the great hope or the great defender of the 90s group and generation would be Zverev. And he was quite limp in that final. Like he's the world number 2, but he honestly does not feel and did not look as though he's at the level of Jannik Sinner. I think the only other person really who's at that level is Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic, if his body at this age will cooperate going forward, which it does not look like it will happen. Here's another stat I want to tell you, Chuck, right? Mm-hmm. In the top 10, Jannik Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz, and Novak Djokovic, who was born in 1987, are the only 3 players who are not born in the 90s. In the top 16, and I'll tell you why I choose this number, 11 of the top 16 were born in the 90s. I choose that number because if all things being equal and at a Grand Slam, the matches hold to the seeding, that means 11 out of the 16 players in the last 16 would have been born in the 90s. And with all those opportunities, these boys cannot go and win a Grand Slam title, cannot go and win just more than 2. We're talking about the fact that we're about to come to the end of January. Right? That means the first batch of 90s babies on the men's side are about to be 35. How many more opportunities are you going to get to win Grand Slam titles? They're a forgettable bunch. I'm sorry to say it. They're a forgettable bunch because they really can't show up.
And Rafa and Roger. And
you see the question that you are asking. You see the question that you are asking. Okay, fine. What could they have done against them? Fine, Chuck. Because at the back end, players born in 97, 98, 99, they're in the physical peak. As men, as athletes, 26, 27, 28, right? Okay, I'll give you what could they have done against the holy trinity of tennis. What about the kids? The kids who are now coming into the game, and I know it's just Alcaraz and Sinner at the moment to represent it, but they've got 7. They've got 7 Grand Slam titles, and guess what? They're only going to get better. So I'll give you, they could not have done anything against Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal, but these kids who are like still smelling like breast milk, they can't defend themselves even against them. Come on, Chuck.
If I were to make a case for them, I'd say at least in the ATP 250s, 500s, I'm sure the numbers measure up and they're doing something. And obviously, I know it's for Grand Slams, but I'm just saying.
Yes, it is for Grand Slams, which is why we've been talking about this because of the Australian Open final.
With opportunities given, they're winning their fair share. Just at the very, very top, Jay. They're just titans at the top.
Can I give you one more stat?
Damn the 90s kids again.
Zverev specifically. I'll give you one more stat about Zverev, right? Coming into that final, Zverev's record against the top 10, I believe, overall was 27 and 30, which is now 27 and 31 in Grand Slams. Do you know overall in his career? Do you know what it is at Grand Slams? It's 4 and 16. Do you know that he's only managed to win one out of 15 matches against a top 5 player at Grand Slams? He's managed to win almost 50% in regular tournament play. So And with tennis, it counts at the top, Chuck. You know this. You were there for Karen Wozniacki being world number one without a Grand Slam title. And there were questions, is it really legitimate? Because every time Serena came back onto the scene, she took people's lunch money.
Consistency. That's what it is.
Consistency will lead you to number one. And I'll give you that. And it's prestigious, right? And you'll win titles. Like Zverev has won the fifth most money in history on the tour. And by the time he's done, it's probably going to be like in the top three. But who cares about all of that when we're talking about legacies? Like, go and win a Grand Slam, man. Like, take it to at least a fourth set. Take it to a fifth set. Do something.
When you look at the talent pool and the legacies of the people who are beating him, who have given him this poor record in Grand Slams, what really, realistically, could he have done against that? Does he have the tools?
By the talent pool, are you including Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why you're asking me that question, Chuck?
Because
now we know how good these boys are because they've gone and won Grand Slams. Before they won Grand Slams, before they took the step up to being players who look like they're going to win double-digit Grand Slams, are going to be in that conversation with the absolute best in history. Before they became that, when they were still kids, you know the theory, like, if we can use the time ring to go back in time, why don't we just go, which was what, Machine Man?
No, not Iron Patriot. It's War Machine.
War Machine asked the question, why don't you just go back in the past and, baby Thanos in his manger? Before he gets to become the Titan and he does what he does. Before Alcaraz and Sinner became what we are seeing play out in front of our eyes, why couldn't you do it then?
Yeah, man. This sounds like Zverev is a man feels, which he's not, Jay. He's trying. He's getting to Grand Slam finals. Just that in the way of these Titans. What can he do if it's not Zverev?
He's a very good player. I'm giving him that. It's a very good player. But it's disappointing with what we think he is, with the level of talent, and also he's spoken about amongst and on the men's tour as one of the fittest guys. So you think a best of five is something that will absolutely suit him, but he gets to these moments and he shrinks, Chuck. That's the truth. He shrinks.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, he shrinks. But Jannik Sinner played a very good final as well, and I think the key, and I don't know if can be proven true, but I think when I've seen the first set tussles between him and Shelton in the semis and him and Zverev in the final, that's more. That's the opening. That's when it's a bit evenly poised, where if you get it to your side, maybe you get a bit of momentum going to the other sets. But because they keep on losing then, and then Sinner gets up, and it's a tall order because he's well-rounded. There aren't any obvious deficiencies in his game. He's athletic. He hits a very good power shot, in either flank, with either shot, backhand or forehand. Not too much you can do. Like we said, these guys are special talents. If it's not Alcaraz, it's Sinner who are in your way. And when Novak's body is able, you saw what he did against Alcaraz as well. It's not much that you can do. And so if you're not there with your A game, and also he was serving quite well in the beginning parts of the tournament. The latter parts, not so much so. And I think he needed his serve to be pinpoint to have a chance against Sinner. It didn't show up.
And Sinner was attacking that serve as well. And to be actually fair, if you look at the serving percentages, Zverev was getting his first serve in there, but it did not matter. And that's the thing where we find ourselves in 2025. The guy who was standing on the opposite end of the court is a guy who is only continuing to grow as an all-time great, who believes that this is the level he belongs at. He's the world number one and he wears that crown very well. And the game is only continuing to grow. You mentioned the fact that he's got weapons. He's got one of the a set of one of the best weapons out on tour, and he also is able to defend with the best of them. Like what I saw when Zverev did try step it up and push the pace, Sinner was everywhere, man. He was looking like Djokovic out there, and it's crazy to think about because again, athletes continue to take evolutions. Because Sinner is taller than Djokovic, but he looks just as limber. He's getting to everything, whether it's short on the court or it's like we asked to run east and west. Like he was getting to everything, and it was being returned with a little more spice on top. So it's a great player that Zverev faced, and it's a player who, as I'm saying, is purring right now.
When you talk about the evolution of the athlete, do you think he's shaken off the controversy of the positive test and stuff? Do you think that people see him in that light and just you're that good, there's no assistance?
No, because that is something that WADA are going into again, because he said he had little knowledge of it, right? And that is what they are asking, that Well, did he have no knowledge of it? I think this is something, well, because it's being reopened. It's something that's going to follow him. He himself, though, I think he's got like great mentality. The difference between him and Swiatek, where Swiatek seemed to have been affected by her positive result, Sinner has moved on from it. And when I look at him on court, and he's very stoic. He doesn't seem to be bothered by much, and he's even keeled in his emotions. Yeah, he looks like a straight up killer out there, you know. So I don't think distractions off the court are things that are in his mind when he's playing. Whereas you look like at his Zverev, there was a shot which so went so badly for him, it felt like it's just not your day, which like hit the net cord, and it was at a pivotal moment in the match, and it went over on his side. And you see him looking up at his people and at the crowd, where it's like, oh, I can't do anything. And I felt for him in the moment, but the guy on the other end, I feel like if that had happened to him, he would have shrugged it off and just like kept going. So yeah, I think Sinner is this is my belief, right? I think Carlos Alcaraz is better than Sinner, and I need him to play Sinner on Grand Slams more often and stop being knocked out earlier on in the tournament. But I think what is happening with Carlos Alcaraz, for example, being knocked out early in tournaments or not being as consistent, is something that won't happen to Sinner, because his mind is fully like on the game. And as I'm saying, he carries himself as the world number one and as the guy who's going to be out there with a target on his back, but he's going to respond each time. So no, Chuck, I don't think off-court distractions are things that are playing on his mind.
Last in the men's game, Sinner did say to Zverev that he's too good not to win a Grand Slam in the near future. Hopefully he rips for the 90s skills and does something. Then you can say, okay, after all that huffing and puffing, at least you got something to show for it. On the ladies' side, it seemed to me, at least, when we got to the final, Madison Keys against Sabalenka, I thought to myself, it's a foregone conclusion. Sabalenka's power is too good. She's going to win that game. But alas, I was mistaken. It goes to 3 sets, and I think for the first time in more than 10 years, the third set went beyond 5-5 in terms of games played. Almost went to the 10-pointer tiebreak. It didn't, because Madison Keys pulled it out the fire and converted. Jay, what do you make of her run all the way to the final and then capturing that crown?
You know, Chuck, when Madison Keys broke in that final game, which was the championship game, I was surprised. Like I thought, because of how I was going on serve, because there were so many breaks in the first 2 sets, that okay, it seems as if they've settled into the pattern where they are just going to continue holding serve. You know, that I was anticipating a championship tiebreak, and it didn't happen. And kudos to Madison Keys, because I was worried about Keys coming into the final, because after she beat Swiatek to make her first Grand Slam final since the 2017 US Open, where she lost to Sloane Stephens and hasn't been back to one, of course, since until now, which is almost 8 years into it. I thought the same thing that happened, for example, with the Proteas men, especially when they finally got over the hump of going past a World Cup semi-final. That was their final, you know. And I saw the interview with her friend afterwards, where like the emotions were very high. It was nervous excitement, but it was also like she was tearing up as well, thinking to myself, no, this is not the time to be feeling like this, because it's going to be hard to come off of this high and to get yourself going again for the final, right? But man, what she proved in that final was superb. That she has the mindset. She's always had the game. We've always known she's always had the game. She turned pro at 14, and after playing Serena Williams for the first time and giving Serena a good game, Serena came out and said that this is a player who's going to win multiple Grand Slam titles, and that's what we expected. Unfortunately, her career has been riddled with injury, but she was healthy for this run. And she was not doing what Zverev was doing. She was not holding back. She was playing, and she was playing freely. And against Sabalenka, who's the 2-time defending champion, and who, much like Sinner, wears the crown of world number one and being the best player in the world very well. You know, she believes that this is who she is. You saw in her matches in the previous rounds how she came back even after a set down, where she believes that she's going to come back and win the match, because ultimately she's the better player. And that's what I thought was happening, but Keys did not shrug. She did not shrink. The gauntlet was thrown in front of her, and with the momentum behind Sabalenka having won the second set, Keys stepped it up again, and she did the business. And this is what she did all tournament long. I mean, she beat Rybakina, a former Wimbledon champion. She beat Svitolina, who was as high as world number 3 once upon a time and has made it to a Grand Slam semi-final as recently as 2 years ago. And then she beat the world number 2 and 4-time Grand Slam champion Iga Swiatek in the semi-final. And then to do it, as I'm saying, against the world number 1, the best player on the tour, definitely the best player on the surface. A brilliant performance and well deserved. And I have to clap also because she's a sister. Although she doesn't describe herself as this. This is me just like claiming her because she's got a black daddy, so she's one of us.
You know what it was for me, Jay, when I looked at Sabalenka's facial expressions and the loss of belief going away from her in the third set. It's almost like Dragon Ball Z. You know how, as it's scripted or as it's written, there'll always be a swing of momentum. One time Goku's winning it, the other time Frieza's winning it. Then Frieza finds out that I've transformed and I've made all these changes to my game and I still can't do it because I'm supposed to be the ruler of the universe. And then you come to realize that not in this lifetime, you know? Because for me, when she won the second set, I thought to myself, okay, things are back on track. Sabalenka's going to outpower. She's going to outmaneuver Madison Keys. It didn't happen. So shout out to Madison, man, because she brought the game to Sabalenka all the time. Never took a step back. Was there meeting her face to face and making sure she puts her own back. You know. So I think I was disappointed by Sabalenka because it's good to go on a run, Jay, especially when you've come so close so often. That eventually, when you do convert, it feels so good, and you want to keep doing it over and over again. Which is what's happened with the Djokovic's and the Nadals and the Federers of this era. Hence, Zverev can't get a sniff. But I think Madison Keys...
Look at Madison Keys being 29, having been born in the 90s. Out there, winning her first Grand Slam title.
Her first. You see, so this time for Zverev...
She's been injured. Those boys don't have those excuses. She's been injured.
Madison before the final, and João Felix. Same. Nah, it's probably disrespectful to say that. To the Australian Open champion, she converted. She looked good on the night. She looked good in the entire tournament as well. And kudos to her. She took the hardest route. She took the toughest gauntlet to get to the final. I think by the time she got to Sabalenka, she was war ready because she was battle hardened by all those ladies that she had to go through. And whether it's power, she matched her. Whether it was placement, she matched her. And it was just sheer mentality on the day because, as we said, games don't go to 5 and beyond. Not in the last 10 years of women's Grand Slam finals. So I think she was ready. Even if it went to tiebreak, I think Madison was ready, you know. So shout out to her.
And this was also a good opponent because traditionally Madison has struggled against counter punches. Your Kerbers, she has a bad record against Angelique Kerber, as well as the Romanian former number 1, whose name is not quite coming to me now. But against a someone who puts pace on the ball, it was maybe the perfect matchup for her. And congratulations to her. Chuck,